Hello everyone, my name is Keely. Welcome to my channel. Welcome back if you've been here before. Today we're going to talk about all the books that I read in the month of May. I had a really good reading month this month, which was kind of unexpected because there were 3 days where I was incredibly busy and out of town, and so I didn't get to finish a book, and it was also end of school stuff, which is chaotic and busy, but I still managed to read 15 books, resulting in 5,839 pages, so I still got to read a lot and I read some really good things. So let's talk about my ratings. So as far as my ratings go, I had 0 1-star, 3 2-star, 4 3-star, 6 4-star, and 2 5-star books. As always, I'm going to talk about the books in the order that I read them in. The first book I read in May was Enter the Body by Joy McCulloch. Now this was a really random pickup for me off of my own shelves, but lately I have felt so drawn to it, so I decided to pick it up. And this book is actually written in verse, and I love books that are written in verse. They read very quickly and they are often so beautiful, and this was no different. So this book actually follows the women of Shakespeare's plays. So we follow Juliet from Romeo and Juliet, we follow Ophelia from Hamlet, and we follow Cordelia from King Lear. Now, I'm not as familiar with Hamlet and King Lear. I know a little bit about them, but I'm obviously a lot more familiar with Romeo and Juliet. But what I didn't realize is often in Shakespeare's plays, the women are silenced or often killed. So this book gives the voice back to those women, and we get to see the story from their point of view, and they get to change the stories to have better endings for them. I loved this book a lot, and I was really surprised with how captivated I was by the characters and the writing. I think I would have enjoyed it even more if I was more familiar with the other two plays, but I don't think it's necessary to be familiar with these plays to enjoy the story, because overall it's just about these women getting their own voices and their own stories as well. This also was a bit gory, which was interesting, and I really liked that, and I just loved getting to read these stories in a way that I can understand them better and from a new lens. I ended up giving this one 4 out of 5 stars, and I highly recommend it, especially if you are a fan of Shakespeare. The next 3 books I read were all a part of my Emily Henry reading vlog, so I will leave that link down below because I really don't want to talk about these books any more than I need to, so please go check out that vlog because it was kind of a train wreck, but I still had fun with it. So the first book I read for that video, obviously in publication order, I read Beach Read. So in this book we follow January and Augustus, and they are both authors. Now January kind of writes romance, women's fiction, and Augustus writes like really sad literary fiction. So they are at like this beachy town, kind of lake town type of thing, and they are neighbors. And they decide to have kind of like this competition where the other person has to write in the other's genre. And they have to finish a book, and whoever's book gets published first wins, and they win the bet and the whole prize and everything like that. So this is also a love story, so they fall in love, and I really enjoyed this one. I love January and Augustus so much. I love seeing them fall in love, and their banter was so good. They have like little nicknames for each other too, and I just really love that. But the setting for this one was really great as well, and I just really fell in love with these characters. Unfortunately, I can't say the same for her other books, but I ended up giving this one 4 out of 5 stars. Next, I read People We Meet on Vacation, and this follows Poppy and Alex. Poppy and Alex were once best friends who took vacations together, and all we know that it has been, I think, like 2 years since they've even talked to each other. But Poppy now works for this magazine where she writes articles about travel, and so she gets to go on this vacation for her job, and it's gonna be the last one she does, and so she decides to invite Alex along for like a whole last time, you know, the good time's sake. So they go to Palm Springs, I believe, which, first of all, already red flag. I would not choose that. Second of all, I hated Poppy and Alex so much. Poppy was so obnoxious to me, and I did not like her as a character, whereas Alex was so unattractive to me. I actually got the ick from him, and so I really did not care about these two in a relationship because I just did not like them. I did not feel the chemistry, and I just did not think that they belonged together at all. Thought it was kind of boring, and overall, if I don't like the characters, I'm not gonna enjoy the story, so I give this one 2 stars. Next, for that vlog, I picked up Book Lovers, once again by Emily Henry, and I don't have a copy to hold up for you because I already unhauled this book. So this one follows Nora and Charlie, and Nora is a book agent and Charlie is an editor. So a few years ago, Nora is trying to get this book published and Charlie is like, that book is trash, I am not working on it. Now, a couple of years later, that book that he wouldn't work on is world famous and everybody loves it, and it is about a small town, I believe it's called Sunshine Falls, and everybody's obsessed with it, especially Nora's sister. I think her name is Libby. So over the summer, Libby and her sister decide to go to Sunshine Falls because Libby's about to have another kid yet again, and so they're gonna go away for some sister time. Of course, when Nora is there, who does she run into but Charlie? I did not like this book once again. This is the book that made me realize that I am not an Emily Henry girly. I thought Nora's sister Libby was awful, horrible, annoying, and I thought the sister relationship between Nora and Libby was extremely toxic, and so I did not root for them at all, and I thought that they should just like stop talking to each other because the way that Nora was with Libby was just not good for her. I didn't like Nora and Charlie once again. I found them incredibly boring. Overall, the setting and the story was really boring, but Libby ultimately ruined this book for me, and I ended up giving it 2 stars once again. As far as the newest Emily Henry, Happy Place, I also did start reading that, but I DNF'd Happy Place. So I will not be putting that in my Goodreads goal or anything. I only got like 100 pages in, but actually no, I think I got more. I think I got like 190 pages in and I like DNF'd it. I don't think Emily Henry can write a book without alcohol and drugs, and I am not interested in reading a book where the characters are drunk or high all the time. No thank you, not for me. I wish I could be an Emily Henry girly, but me and Emily Henry's characters just live in different circles, and that's okay. Next, I read Do Not Disturb by John Athan, and this is an extreme horror book. After my downfall with Emily Henry, I needed extreme horror to pick me up, and this is a slasher about killer clowns. We follow a group of people, different characters, who are all staying in this motel overnight, and at this motel, a group of clowns shows up and just starts slashing and killing people. So this one was really fun to read. I've read John Athan before and I really like his writing, and his descriptions are crazy. This book in particular had a lot of eye horror, and that is the one thing that really gets to me, is anything to do with eyes. I will say the action scenes were a little too quick for me, so it felt a little hard for me to follow at points, but overall I still enjoyed it. But it's not my favorite John Athan book, but I gave it 3 stars. Next book was a reread for me, and that is Cress by Marissa Meyer. This is book 3 in the Lunar Chronicles series. I'm currently rereading this series. If you don't know, this is a sci-fi retelling of fairy tales, and this 3rd book in particular, we meet a character named Cress, who is a retelling of Rapunzel. This has always been my favorite book in the entire series because I love Cress and Thorn so much. The first time I read about Cress, I was like, that is me, and I still see so much of myself in her, so I love reading her. I think she is so incredible, and her character development is so cool. I love the sci-fi elements in here. In this one in particular, we get to see more of space and how things work on Luna, which is the moon planet that has been overtaken by like an evil queen. But I really love how all the characters come together and each story builds on the other, and of course I gave this one 5 stars yet again. Next, I read my Stephen King book of the month, and that was Firestarter, and I really enjoyed this one. So in the story, we follow a little girl named Charlie and her father, and they are on the run. So years and years ago, Charlie's mother and father were in this experiment at a college where they were tested on, and they started developing these kind of powers. Charlie's dad has this thing that he calls the push, where he can probably like alter people's thoughts or their actions through just like pushing their mind, whereas Charlie is a fire starter. She can create fires like out of nowhere and just like kill a bunch of people. She is awesome. I really love Charlie. The more Stephen King books I read, the more I really enjoy and respect his writing and how the story all comes together. I've always said that he gets random chapters thrown in there and you're like, okay, why is this here? How does this play a part? And then when it really comes together, you're like, oh my gosh, he is a genius. This was one that I really enjoyed, and one of my favorites. I gave this one 4 stars. The next 2 books I read for my anticipated thriller releases vlog, so I will leave that link down below. But the first one I have to talk about is The Last Word by Taylor Adams. Now this is probably my most anticipated book of the year, and unfortunately I was a little bit let down. So in this book, we follow a woman who is staying at this cabin and she is house sitting. There is like no phone, cell service, no TVs or anything, so she spends her time reading and reading and reading and reading. So she has a neighbor across the way and they've never really met or talked, but they do communicate through a whiteboard and play hangman or just talk to each other through that, but that's the only communication she really has to anybody else. So one day her neighbor recommends this extreme horror book and she reads it and she hates it. So she leaves a scathing 1-star review, and of course the author is not happy about that review. So ensues some kind of threatening emails between her and the author. Throughout the night, some spooky, scary things start happening. She starts hearing noises or potentially seeing people at the house, and she's starting to think maybe this author really was upset about the review and is coming after her to create another extreme horror novel. So that premise sounds amazing, and the fact that I am a book reviewer, it just feels like it would be perfect and spooky and atmospheric, and unfortunately I was a little let down. I felt like the first 100 pages of this book were incredibly slow, and then it picked up, and I love when it picks up, especially Taylor Adams books. No Exit was one of my favorites, and so when it picked up I got really excited, but I had this disconnect with the story. I didn't really care about the main character or any of the action that was going on. I can't really explain it. I just didn't feel like I was solely there reading this book. I still gave it 3 stars though. It's just not my favorite. The next book I read for that video was What Have We Done by Alex Finlay. So this book has 3 point of views and we follow 3 adults who all have great lives now, but 25 years earlier they lived in a group home together. Now this group home was incredibly toxic and abusive and just not a great place to be, and young children, specifically girls, kept going missing. So all we know is 25 years earlier something happened at night with these children, and now that group home has since shut down. So these adults we follow have all started their own lives. Some of them are rich, some of them have families, and they don't really talk or see each other anymore, but somebody is starting to come after them and try to kill them off. So these 3 characters have to come together and figure out if it has to do with what happened 25 years ago. I had a great time reading this book. It was so fast-paced and action-packed, and we get all point of views from those 3 adults that were all together when they were little, and each point of view was so unique and different and slightly unhinged in the best way. They were all going through crazy, just wild circumstances, and I really loved it. I thought the story was pretty unique just because the different characters all stood out on their own and you could really tell who was who. I loved getting to see the flashbacks to the group home and to what was going on with them now, and each situation felt like a life or death fight for your life, and I love those type of stories so much. I had a great time reading this. I don't think it'll be for everyone, but I really loved it, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. So it was at this point in the month where I started really getting into the thriller mood, and I just dropped everything and started reading thrillers. So the next book I read was Hidden Pictures by Jason Rekulek. I saw this book on Kindle Unlimited and I've been wanting to read it since it came out, so I snatched it up and started it immediately. So this book follows a young girl named Mallory, and she just got a new job as a nanny for this family, and they are really rich and they have a little boy. Now this little boy really likes to draw pictures, and over the course of Mallory nannying him, the pictures start increasingly becoming more worried and gruesome because he starts drawing pictures of a woman being killed and buried. So Mallory, of course, is worried about this and trying to figure out what's going on when creepy things around the house start happening. So I felt like this story was super fast-paced and really unique. I honestly don't think I've ever read anything like this, and I don't want to say anything more about it because I think you should go into this book as blind as possible and just know that it's about a nanny, a little boy, and creepy pictures. This book as well, I feel like you should have the physical book or an ebook because the pictures are in the story and they really do get creepy, and it's interesting to see the progression throughout the story of how the drawings go from like these neat little stick figures to some gruesome and gory details. I really enjoyed this book, and I thought that everything wrapped up crazily, and the twist was something I just didn't really expect, so it was fun and a great time, and I gave it 4 stars. Next, I completed my reread of the Lunar Chronicles by reading Winter by Marissa Meyer. This is the 4th and final book, and in this book we meet a character named Princess Winter, and she is a retelling of Snow White. All the characters come together in this 4th and final book, and they meet and become friends, and this group of just like a found family in this series is so iconic, and I love it so much. Once again, 5 stars. All these books are 5 stars for me, and I just love this series so much. Next, I randomly picked up You Shouldn't Have Come Here by Geneva Rose. This book follows a woman named Grace who is going to stay in this really remote Airbnb in Wyoming. This Airbnb is run by a really attractive man named Calvin, so Grace and Calvin, over the course of her vacation, start developing this relationship. But Grace starts to feel like this town is a little bit off and that there are secrets involved until the police come knocking one day and she finds out that there is a missing woman around the area. So she has started this relationship with Calvin, but towards the end of her trip, things start turning a little sour. That's all I'm gonna say. This book reminds me of a Hallmark movie with a little bit of a ominous twist. So over this entire romance and this ranchy little vibe we got going on in a small town in Wyoming, beautiful setting, there's just this ominous vibe and feeling over the whole story. I feel like most people are not gonna like this book because it is really slow, but I felt like I was reading through it so quick because I was just hanging on to every word the characters were saying and I wanted to know what was going on, because just like Grace, I feel like things were a little bit off, but we did not know until the very end how off things just were. But like I said, this has a Hallmark vibe with just a little bit of a spooky, ominous twist, and I really had a great time reading it. Once again, I feel like I'm gonna be like the only person that really loved this book, but I gave it 4 stars and I had a great time reading it. I loved seeing the relationship develop. We got some little spicy tension moments, but we also got this spooky, like, murdery moments as well, and I loved that. Next, I read Behind Her Eyes by Sarah Penborough, and this book follows a woman named Louise. And one night, she meets this man at a bar, they share a kiss, and the next day she realizes that is her new boss. Oh wait, her boss is actually married. So Louise quickly becomes this other woman in this relationship, but she also becomes friends with her boss's wife, Adele. So that's all I'm gonna say about this, because this book is so wild and unhinged. There is also an element in this book about dreaming. Dreaming is one of my absolute buzzwords in books. I love when dreams or lucid dreaming is featured in a book, and this was a lot about dreaming and I loved that so much. I will say, I feel like Louise was not my favorite character to follow. I think she was an idiot. But on the other hand, Adele was a genius. I will just say that. I ended up giving this book 3 stars. I was between a 3 and a 4, but it was a short book. However, it felt kind of long to me. But I will say the ending of this book, I had to really focus on what was going on because it was so chaotic, but in a good way. And I just like cannot stop thinking about this book because it was just so wild and weird and wackadoodle, and I just had a great time, but I still just gave it 3 stars. The next book I read was Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. I was really looking forward to this book because Rock, Paper, Scissors by this author was one of my favorite books of last year. So Daisy Darker is actually a retelling of And Then There Were None, which is an Agatha Christie story. So in this book, we follow a family who are all going to stay at this house called Sea Glass, which is their grandmother's house because their grandmother is turning 80. So in this house, it's like on the beach, but when the tide comes in, you are stuck at the house until the tide comes back out. So they are stuck there, I think, for like 8 hours. So their grandmother has always said that when she turns 80, that's going to be her last year because a palm reader or somebody told her that. So, of course, when the clock strikes midnight, Grandma turns up dead, and then every hour on the hour, somebody else ends up dying. So, my review on Goodreads for this book, I hated everybody in this book, and they all got what they deserved. I hated these characters and this family so much that I gave this book 2 stars because I was so angry and just everyone was despicable and I hated it. I thought the story was boring, did not care about any of them, did not like anything that happened, and I feel like this actually makes sense for me because I hate Agatha Christie stories, and so I just did not have a great time, which I was so surprised with because it's Alice Feeney and I love the other book I read by her, so I'm really interested if I will love or hate her other books. And finally, the last book that I read in May was Run on Red by Noelle W. Ilhe, and this book is incredibly fast and action-paced. We follow 2 girls who are driving on like this back mountain road to go to a party when this truck starts to run them off the road. There are these 2 guys in the truck and they essentially are trying to kill these girls, and so over the course of the night, these girls are just trying to survive. So this is a survival story which I really, really loved. It is so fast-paced and things are happening so quickly and you're really rooting for these girls. I really did enjoy both Olivia and Laura, who are the two girls that we follow, and I was rooting for them the whole time and hoping that everything turned out okay. This book went in a direction I really didn't expect. However, I don't think the story is going to stick with me for a long time, so I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I had a good time reading it, but it's not something that I'm going to think about forever. So those are all the books that I read in the month of May. Let me know your favorite book that you read. I would love to know. But if you've made it this far in the video, go ahead and leave the apple emoji because winter apple. But that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. As always, all my social media links will be down below, and I'll see you next time. Bye!